The topic on the table today is one I never thought I would even mention in relation to the State of the Union address, but I would love to share the anthropology of aliens and how imagined non-human intelligence has actually accompanied human societies for like thousands of years. It's a very cool topic, and I like approaching this scientifically and explaining systems and processes, so this in no way supports my personal views, but I do love sharing how humans over time have viewed aliens, and like what a better time than today. So let's get into it. So even though imagined non-human intelligence has existed, as I said, for thousands of years, their form has changed so much across time, but their persistence within our societies really reveals something stable about human cognition and social organization. Anthropology approaches these figures as products of cultural systems, embedded in cosmology, power, and knowledge, rather than something that's just an isolated curiosity. So if we trace this chronologically, there's a very clear pattern throughout human history. Extraterrestrial imaginaries evolve alongside shifts in cosmology, also alongside political authority, also technological capability and capacities, and the scientific method itself. So it's just wild to me that the topic of aliens relates to the State of the Union address. I still can't get past that part, and I was planning to do something about some of the metaphysical topics within anthropology, and the timing of this was just wild to me, so it seemed proper and right, you know? Let's start by looking at early cosmologies and celestial intelligence. In many really early civilizations, the sky itself carried really deep associations with order and authority. And Mesopotamian traditions were linked to celestial movements and also to divine governance. And then Egyptian theology embedded cosmic balance with sky-oriented deities. Mesoamerican cosmologies integrated celestial beings into creation narratives, and then numerous indigenous traditions describe star ancestors within relational systems connecting land, lineage, and sky. So Emil Durkheim's theory of the sacred helps clarify what exactly is happening here. In the elementary forms of religious life, he had argued that sacred symbols express collective social power. Celestial beings embodied the moral authority of the group. Let me say that correctly. Celestial beings embodied the moral authority of the group being projected onto the heavens. And the pattern movement of the sky reinforced the perception of stability and order. And Claude Lévi-Strauss, he focused on structuralism. And structuralism deepens that same analysis because human thought organizes meaning through relational positioning, and celestial intelligence occupied an elevated position relative to humanity. Their presence helped clarify what it meant to be human within a cosmological hierarchy. And really at this stage, intelligence beyond humanity was theological in character, and the heavens function as metaphysical terrain that was structured by divine agency. So moving on to scientific cosmology and the material universe, the scientific revolution fundamentally altered how the heavens were understood. Telescopic observation revealed terrain on the moon and physical structure in planetary bodies. And then the cosmos became more measurable and more material to us. Speculation about life beyond Earth entered into a more scientific discussion, and during the 19th century, reports of Martian canals encouraged public consideration of advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. And scientific observation and popular imagination began to circulate together, which shaped expectations about life elsewhere. And Lévi-Strauss, Claude Lévi-Strauss I mentioned earlier, His structural model still remains relevant even in this time period, and as cosmology became empirical, alterity shifted into biological speculation, and the alien became conceivable as an organism that was governed by some form of natural law, and it retained its relational function in defining humanity. It is now situated within a vastly expanded universe. And at this stage, extraterrestrial intelligence moved from like a sacred hierarchy into more of a scientific possibility or a realm of science. So looking at technological modernity and the alien form itself, after World War II, reports of unidentified flying objects increased, particularly in technologically advanced societies, and airspace was saturated constantly with radar systems, with aircraft and missile technologies, and the sky became more of a domain of strategic importance. And alien imagery during this time period emphasized advanced craft and technical precision. Abduction narratives frequently described controlled environments and procedural examination. And that's a slippery slope to get into researching. I've been down that road before, just out of curiosity of how people have experienced what they perceived as alien abductions, and the similarities in their stories it's just fascinating. But not to go down that rabbit hole, at least for now. So Mary Douglas's work on classification offers a really important lens to this. She had argued that societies maintain order through categorical boundaries. So figures that stretch or reorganize those categories attract sustained symbolic attention. And the alien extends the boundaries of life and agency, inviting reflection on species identity and technological hierarchy. And then Victor Turner's concept of liminality situates many reported encounters within transitional contexts, so like nighttime awakenings, isolated travel, altered states of consciousness that frequently frame these narratives. And the alien itself occupies a threshold position between established categories and then reinforcing its association with transformation. And then Michael Foucault's analysis of power and knowledge really deepens this picture a lot for us. And I love power dynamics and knowledge share and memetics, so this area is always fascinating to me. But Cold War governance intensified secrecy and surveillance, and alien discourse frequently incorporated themes of classified information and institutional concealment. And the extraterrestrial figure became entangled with contemporary structures of authority and information control. So during this period, the alien required a technologically structured form aligned with modern bureaucratic systems. There's also the side of community formation and interpretive stability. And in the late 20th century, we saw the growth of interpretive communities organized around extraterrestrial discourse. It's very cool. Conferences, publications, digital platforms, all of these things stabilize shared terminology and explanatory frameworks. So we were all speaking the same language, if you will. So Peter Berger and Thomas Luckmann's theory of social construction of reality clarifies how stabilization occurs. So repeated discourse institutionalizes meaning. Collective validation strengthens interpretive continuity. Communities form around shared narratives that provide coherence to unusual experiences. Extraterrestrial imagery during this time period became embedded in media culture, documentary formats, emerging internet networks. It began spreading quickly, and meaning was produced and circulated through sustained social interaction. So getting into the 21st century of astrobiology and scientific networks, extraterrestrial inquiry became embedded within formal scientific infrastructure as well. So astrobiology investigates extremophiles exoplanets, atmospheric biosignatures, computational systems process astronomical data at a large scale. So that means that our ability to process information had increased significantly. And Bruno Latour, he has something called the actor network theory. And this theory provides a helpful framework within this realm, and that extraterrestrial life becomes a scientific object through networks of telescopes, satellites, funding agencies, peer reviews, AI algorithms, and political oversight, hence why it's related to today. Knowledge emerges through these interconnected actors, and extraterrestrial life is now framed probabilistically within biochemical and astrophysical parameters. So inquiry is being institutionalized, essentially, and methodologically it's being structured in a way that other scientists can digest it, and it's being integrated into global research systems, which adds a lot of power behind that research. So skipping forward to 2026 and the politics of disclosure. In 2026, extraterrestrial discourse intersects directly with executive authority and public transparency initiatives, as we're seeing today. Announcements concerning the release of federal files on unidentified anomalous phenomenon situate the subject within formal governance structures. From an anthropological perspective, disclosure initiatives operate as performative acts of institutional positioning. So the state presents itself as a custodian of classified knowledge and a manager of uncertainty. And Foucault's framework clarifies how information release shapes the boundaries of legitimate inquiry. The act of disclosure carries symbolic significance beyond the content of documents. It integrates extraterrestrial discourse into national archives and legislative oversight. And Durkheim's theory of collective attention remains relevant here as well. Anticipation surrounding file releases concentrates public focus and media engagement. Extraterrestrial inquiry becomes a shared horizon of curiosity structured by institutional authority. And Lévi-Strauss's structural insight applies again at this stage. Humanity is positioned within a layered hierarchy that includes terrestrial institutions and potential cosmic intelligence. The alien itself, the alien, continues to function as a relational figure through which human identity is clarified. So here we are in 2026, February 24th, 2026. And extraterrestrial imagery represents an expanded cosmological horizon that's intertwined with state authority, scientific method, and digital communication systems. So to wrap this up very simply, the anthropology of aliens traces all of these developments and all of what I've shared as a structured reflection of social organization, epistemology, and collective imagination across time. But today, it holds a lot of power in where we put our trust in inquiry and how we view the release of this type of information. This type of information is astronomical, for lack of a better word, but also to throw a pun in there. This type of information is so massive that it, in some way, would be shaped as so important that human-related things on our basic planet Earth will become smaller in comparison. Not to call it a distraction technique or tactic, but to draw attention to something that feels cosmologically or universally larger to make our problems as humans seem smaller. So it is important to consider that as we're looking into this potential release of alien-related imagery or files. What does that power hold? I want you to think like an anthropologist. What does this information mean? Why does releasing it now carry more weight? Why today? What's happening in our society where releasing this at this time drives maybe a bigger agenda, if there is one? What is the benefit of choosing today to release this information based on where our society is, and why now and not yesterday? Why now and not tomorrow? Think about the power behind information and what it means, and help yourself understand just how much power there is in the timing of information release as well.